Welcome back to the Done Deal Show. Raphael Varane is expected to be formally unveiled, announced today by Manchester United Football Club. Contracts have been sorted and done for a while. The ink dried yesterday. He trained with the Manchester United squad as well ahead of this weekend's opening Premier League game against Leeds United. But later today, the shirt number will be revealed. Manchester United will finally show him off to the world in the Manchester United shirt, which, of course, the Red Devils across the UK and across the world have been clucking for the past week or so since the announcement was formally agreed and put out there by both Real Madrid and Manchester United. We're also going to be delving into the Harry Kane situation. It is reported that a big, mammoth, gargantuan bid will be placed next week by Manchester City in for Tottenham Hotspur. There have also been other reports that there have been secret negotiations, which both clubs are denying or are quite close-lipped about at this moment in time. Could we see Harry Kane join Manchester City after this weekend's opening day Premier League clash between the Lily Whites of North London and the Citizens of Manchester? Jules Kounde to Chelsea is another deal that's been rumbling on now for a fair while. FFP balancing the books, and of course, Kurt Zuma leaving have taken their toll really on this deal and delayed it. But it's highly reported and highly thought of that this deal will go through and will be concluded, of course, after the completion and the announcement yesterday of Romelu Lukaku returning to Stamford Bridge. We're also going to be delving into the Arsenal midfield situation. Martin Odegaard now being touted as the number one guy, the main player that Arsenal are chasing. But there are still mooted reports of a pursuit for James Maddison, but is it going to be too expensive? Could Arsenal end up with Houssem Aouar at the end of the day, or will there be no more major incomings at Arsenal Football Club this summer? Will the spending stop at around 70 to 80 million pounds with the Aaron Ramsdale deal now looking like it's dead in the water? We're going to delve into that and take your questions. I'm, of course, joined by the wonderful Dean Jones, normally on Tuesdays, but it's been a busy week for us both. So we're here on a Friday morning on the eve of the kickoff of the Premier League season. Brentford versus Arsenal tonight. We're live after that game as well. So make sure you stay with the Football Terrace all day. Smash the like button this morning, ladies and gentlemen. You know what comes next? Here we go. Morning, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, very good. Busy week. We've got the transfers, but now we've got the season started as well. So the two worlds collide, and that's when things become double busy.
Yeah, I always anticipated towards the back end of this week it would really slow down with clubs and teams really wanting to focus on having a good start to the season, which always seems to take precedent at this point. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting night. Brentford versus Arsenal. We'll touch on that a little bit later. It's a derby night for Arsenal, really. With there seems to have gone so much positivity around the Arsenal camp and fan base over the course of this summer, and it really seems to have gone a little bit nasty in the last kind of 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, we'll see. Like tonight gauges everything really for Arsenal, doesn't it? They've had a decent window, but you lose to Brentford on the opening day, and suddenly that's a full-blown crisis, and you've got to go and buy a striker, a creative midfielder, a goalkeeper. You need a complete overhaul of one game into the season. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Arsenal obviously still got some bits to do this window, though, anyway, either way. So we'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big kind of news that everybody's refreshing their timelines for today, refreshing the Man United app for, is the announcement of Raphael Varane, of course, expected today over the line and to be completed There's obviously been a lot of fury around not seeing it being announced at this point. Do you expect it? Do you expect it to be today? And do you think he'll feature against Leeds United tomorrow?
Do you know what? I'd move on from these stories because like I get to the point where in my own head like things are fine and they're done and I'm told like it's fine, it'll just be an announcement. I sometimes actually miss the unveilings because I'm so confident that there's nothing to see there anymore. Let's go on to the next transfer. And Varane's been one of those. I mean, the fee was agreed almost 3 weeks ago. So I understand fans like, why is this taking so long? But because of quarantine and because of the little clauses within contracts that needs to be ironed out, the medical, it's just all dragged on a bit longer than it normally would have. Jadon Sancho wasn't that dissimilar to this, was it? It's just the way things are. Varane, I presume it's being done today. I doubt he'll play against Leeds either way. But for United's point of view, like it's great to even have him coming in, and the whole point is that they now have 3 top centre halves at the club. Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof needed some top level competition. They're going to get it in Raphael Varane, so shouldn't really matter if Varane's available for this first game because they didn't really know that Varane was coming at all. A month or so ago. So it's a bonus, and we'll see how they get on without him, and then once he comes in, you'll see how much he improves them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about the transfers and the start of the new season is always the rival fans are clucking to see that mistake from Varane because he's this star player. All rival fans are looking for Jack Grealish to drop an absolute stinker in his opening game and Lukaku to have a bad touch. And that's what I do love about it, because we're starting to see the fandom come back out from people now. After a summer of pretty much unison over England, the transfer window is just, a lot of it is conjecture and opinions. We now actually get to see the fruits of the labor. And, what I love about the opening weekend is everybody's got hope. It's that, that hope of the opening weekend of the season. No matter where your team is in the spectrum of things, there's always that, this could be our year to, move to that next level, push into Europe, get into the top 4, win the league title. And, it's always interesting. Again, 2 or 3 weeks in, some of those hopes are absolutely crumbled and smashed, and others are absolutely flying high. But he's going to be announced today, Raphael Varane. And just keep saying to Man United fans, relax a little bit. There's a number of reasons. This is one area that I used to come across quite a bit in my old job, is from when a fee gets kind of agreed and announced to it being signed can take ages. And a lot of the time it is due to paperwork, it's due to legalities, sponsorships, commercial side of things. And it's really boring.
Yeah.
And there isn't anything to report on. It's just the nature of the beast. The problem we have now with social media is what you would have seen 5 years ago plus, maybe even longer than that now, is you wouldn't have seen anything announced about Varane until today. You wouldn't have known 3 weeks ago that the fee was agreed. It would have just, you'd heard rumors in the papers, but it would just come out at the end of this thing. But now that, because of social media, we get these big holding messages and we get these big announcements. And it's sort of, I remember when Van Persie went through and Wayne Rooney, all those deals seemed to happen really quickly. And that was because you only saw it at the end. You saw it at the end of the process. Rather now, we get to see the whole thing the whole way through. So just feel like relax a little bit.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's been interesting throughout my career as a journalist, seeing how it's changed. And you're right. You kind of break a story sometimes on a newspaper and sit back for a bit, and then might do an update after a few days if there was anything new to report. Then if you found out the deal was going to go through, then you might then go big again, or you just wait for it to be announced. And the world of social media definitely changes it, and the constant desire of people for there to be news that just simply is not there. Really not sure what update people are really expecting. If it'll be announced when it's announced. Just enjoy yourselves. Know that he's coming. It's all fine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's on its way. There are no problems whatsoever. The big sort of trending news today is Harry Kane. Just to everyone tuning in, we're going to touch on Tottenham first. We're going to have a talk about Chelsea later, Arsenal coming up. So stay with us the whole time and smash that like button. But the big sort of news yesterday that kind of started to emerge, it's gone quiet for about a week or so, was Harry Kane and a new bid that's expected from Manchester City. I've seen different things range, but from 120 to 130 base, with potential add-ons to try and take Harry Kane to the Etihad. What's the latest as far as you understand it with the potential transfer of Harry Kane?
Well, I mean, we are where we are because it was never going to happen before now. They've always been very clear, Tottenham, that they're very clear that they don't want to sell Harry Kane at all. But certainly they weren't going to sell him before they play against Man City. So now at least we're at that date where they're playing Man City, and as expected from my point of view, nothing's happened yet. Now, after this game, discussions can actually begin formally, if you like. And from what I understand, the 120 million is the base figure, and then it could be up to 20 million in add-ons. That's kind of where City's head is at, from what I understand. Obviously, Spurs is at 160 more, possibly even. I don't see City getting to that level. This is still extraordinary spending. Buying Jack Grealish for 100 million and then going for another player over 100 million, smashing records all over the place here, Man City, and it's not really been in their nature up to now, but they're going for it. And Harry Kane obviously wants it. It's a strange one from a Tottenham point of view because he's back at the club, obviously, and he's doing the right things now to be seen to, but there'll definitely be a little bit of tension there because it is pretty clear that he wants to go. And he wants to know how it's going to happen. He needs this bid to arrive. I believe that bid will come by the middle of next week. And once that bid arrives, Harry Kane will be in a better position to actually push Tottenham to sell him. Right now, he's not in any position to do that because the 100 million that they were putting forward initially was, one, a long time ago, and two, rejected. And since then, Kane's been left a little bit in limbo of this dream move that he wants. So he's been assured that it's coming. As I say, I think it's coming next week. And yeah, once we get to that point, this story could start to move on again, and we'll see whether Tottenham do cave in. They're still adamant they won't. But we'll see. I mean, clubs have said that many times before, and players have been able to force things through. So yeah, I mean, it's a guessing game really at this point as to whether it'll actually get there.
Yeah, I get that completely. I think I've read so many things this week and heard so many comments that there's a notion that Daniel Levy now won't want to allow himself to look like he's lost a negotiation. So because they've said 150, 160 in the past, if it isn't that amount, it'll appear like he's lost, and he won't want to do that. But then at the same time, there are these opportunities out there in Europe to sign some really good replacements who are currently, the talk is that they're not available. For instance, Lautaro and Martinez. But suddenly you stick 70, 80 million pounds in front of Inter Milan and the world could change. But are Tottenham able to do that without selling Harry Kane? That remains to be sort of seen right now. In terms of Daniel Levy, do you think he'll budge if it isn't 150, 160? Your own opinion based on what you're hearing, or do you think it could be a rejection and maybe a final bid towards the end of the window?
I'll be surprised. I mean, Daniel Levy has, his main point on this has always been that Tottenham needs to get back in the Champions League. Their best chance of being back in the Champions League is with Harry Kane. No matter who they buy, you can't make up for what Harry Kane gives that team. So that's why he set the bar initially. To be honest, he was saying, "Give me 200 million, you can have him." Now we're getting to that 160 figure, and we'll see if that really is where they have what they have in mind. But he's also got in his head now that there could be a real backlash here from Spurs fans if Harry Kane goes 1 week before the window closes. It completely changes the outlook of their season. On the back of 2 seasons, I guess, of different types of disappointment, this season then begins to look like you've almost got no hope, to be honest. If Tottenham want to get into that top 4, how are they going to do it without Harry Kane? With him, maybe. Without him, just don't see it. So that's what he's got to consider right now. Like, what are the positives and negatives of selling Harry Kane? The positive is that you get £140 million, whatever it is. The rest are all negative. There's no other positives to losing Harry Kane. So that's his stance. And Tottenham sources still are adamant. that they've known Levy for a long time. Unless he's changing his nature, changing his way of working, which maybe he is. Fabio Paratici coming in a role where he's actually advising the club on business decisions and, making offers to players that are, above and beyond what they normally would have gone in for. Maybe they are changing their thinking, but this would be a big change. And it would also be a gamble.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think for me, I've said all summer, I think it's a gamble in every single direction. You keep him and then you don't make the top four, and then you lose that valuation over the next few years. It doesn't pay off. It's about the only way that he gets it right is if whatever the decision is, if Tottenham get back into the Champions League, that's at the end of the day, if they sell him and they bring in Lautaro, Martinez, and the fella from Fiorentina whose name now eludes me, if they come in and under Nuno there's this resurgence and they finish third this season, then selling Harry Kane is a genius move for the size of Tottenham. However, if it goes in the other direction and they flop and they come seventh and Harry Kane scores 40 goals and wins the Premier League, there's going to be fallout, isn't there? And that's the nature of these transfers. In terms of Tottenham, I mean, what is going on with their pursuit of additional strikers or potential replacements? We keep seeing that reports that Nuno's going to play with two strikers. He wants Harry Kane and a partner. What's the latest with sort of their pursuits of the likes of Lautaro Martinez?
Yeah, it's going to be a different season for Tottenham. They're looking to begin with a 4-3-3, and then once they know the end of this window, I guess, what their squad is, then we'll see different approaches from them. Lautaro Martinez had the story back last Friday that they got him with an approach to Inter Milan. Not out of the blue, but I think people were quite surprised at how bold they'd been to put up the kind of money that they were willing to put up. It was reported a few places that had been accepted. I didn't understand at the time that it had been accepted. I was just told that they'd gone forwards with an offer upwards of £60 million. And they were just waiting to hear back. I checked on this yesterday and the situation just hasn't moved forward at all. Lautaro Martinez looks like he'll be staying with Inter Milan. In the sense that there has been no signs for Tottenham or Arsenal or anybody else that Inter Milan are going to be willing to sell him. Now, you just seen there was noises coming out that Lautaro is happy at Inter Milan and, maybe a new contract's in the offing. And maybe that will happen. But the fact is Lautaro's head has been turned by interest from the Premier League. He wants to give it a go at some point. Inter Milan's not a great place to be right now. It's not a terrible place to be, but it's not the place it was a year ago. And, there are various players in the squad looking for move, and Lautaro was one of them. So we'll see. Inter might have a change of heart because they did over Lukaku. Lukaku basically went to Inter Milan and said, you need to accept this next offer from Chelsea. I won you the league. I've done well for you. I appreciate what you've done for me, but now please respect what I want with the rest of my career. I was as frank as that, to be honest, when it came to getting out of Inter Milan. And then the next offer arrived from Chelsea. It was good enough and they accepted it. Will Lautaro go down that route? I don't know if he can. At the moment, I'm just told that they're trying to block it and he won't be able to move. So we'll see what kind of money he's actually put up further down the line, and Arsenal still not actually made a bid. So, so Tottenham were looking at that. And that, as I said, that was as an addition to Harry Kane. That wasn't instead of Harry Kane. That was just to go alongside Harry Kane. And, they got Heung-min Son and they got a couple of others that can potentially play as a partnership with Kane. But ultimately, Lautaro would be a really, really big step up from those other guys in the squad, apart from Son. Now, what I've heard in the last few days is that a couple of other players being linked with Tottenham that aren't quite the same mould. So I've heard Ismaila Sarr at Watford. I've heard Wilfried Zaha of Crystal Palace. Both players that Tottenham are looking at. Now, it hasn't gone very far yet. Maybe they won't look to progress with that interest. But the fact that those names are being put forward, that, they're a different type of forward. And I guess it shows that there are various ideas that Nuno's working on right now and that Tottenham are trying to be versatile and flexible in their thinking. So I think it will be interesting still with Tottenham. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens with this Kane offer next week. And on the back of it, whether they are replacing him or still finding a partner for him. But even Vlahovic, Vlahovic is close to signing a new contract if he hasn't already signed it with Fiorentina. And the what I'm hearing is that he'd probably give it one more year in Serie A with them anyway, and then look to move to a bigger club after that. So there's a lot of obstacles for Tottenham in finding another forward. That they'll try, and I think they will get somebody. It's just a case of who is it going to be.
Yeah, I get that completely, and I think the Harry Kane situation plays a part in that as well. As you say, it's this element of who they go after might depend on how much money they've got. If Harry Kane leaves, they've got a lot more money and scope to buy players than they do without him. And maybe they don't want to. I don't know what the right word for it is, but kind of have a false start. Sign someone now, and then they're not going to do this. But sign a player of say Zaha's level, and then suddenly have Harry Kane money and miss out on a bigger and better target. And I think, as you said, I think if Man City weren't playing Tottenham until November, it could have been very different how they approached this summer. But the last thing that Tottenham would have wanted is for Harry Kane to be lining up in a City shirt opening day of the season and score a hat trick. And look, he might not go there anyway, but I think that's just what I think that's probably been the big delay in everything.
I think he obviously wanted this deal done before the Euros, and if it had been done, I got a feeling he might have cut that holiday short to be fit for this game. Don't you reckon?
Yeah, exactly. You'd have seen the workout videos in Barbados or wherever it was. Yeah, exactly. These things will all play their part. And I think for Tottenham, it's going to be very interesting. You mentioned the Lautaro Martinez thing. I just think that's my view is very, very, very simple on that. With everyone I've spoken to, including yourself and Pete and some other journalists, talking to an Italian guy the other day, I feel like if a big enough offer goes in, they will, like Inter will accept. But because you look at the Lukaku situation, although they were financially in trouble and they needed to get rid of him, really, they still got nearly £100 million. It isn't like they have been selling players at a cut price value to save themselves. Does that make sense? Like, it isn't like they've been selling players that are worth 80 million for 30 and it's easy to do. They're still hung on for money, but we'll see. It's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Viewers, please make sure you've smashed that like button. We are touching on Kounde to Chelsea a little bit later. We'll do a bit of a transfer overview as well. But I did want to stay with Arsenal. I know we've mentioned them in relation to Lautaro Martinez, but there's a lot going on at Arsenal at the minute. And one of the biggest stories yesterday was about Martin Odegaard now being considered the number one choice again. There were stories of Bernardo Silva rejections. Now there suddenly claims that there's been no real serious interest in James Maddison at all. What's the latest in terms of their pursuit of a new midfield player at Arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, my information on Maddison has always been that probably wouldn't happen. There's obvious interest there, no big interest, but Leicester were trying to price him out of a move there, and they were, if they'd have got £70 million for James Maddison, then they'd have taken it, but they didn't feel that Arsenal were in the business to pay that sort of money for Maddison. And I was always just told to play it down a little bit, to be honest, and I have done that with you. So if it doesn't happen, it's been that approach has paid off for me. But they're obviously getting a little bit concerned now about the depth of their squad and the options they have. And Martin Odegaard does come back into the picture here. The player himself made a decision at the end of last season to go back to Real Madrid and try and prove himself. He wanted that move to be a success. Of course he did. Like, it was a high-profile move to Real Madrid, and he's barely had a chance. And it doesn't look like he's going to get one now either under Carlo Ancelotti. The player is not very optimistic about getting chances. It's being reported that he will be made available in this market. And as a result of that, Arsenal need to come back into the discussion here. They thought that Odegaard, one of the main factors over Odegaard was, the value of him. And if they wanted him, they'd have had to buy him and it would have cost a lot, and they couldn't reach those kind of levels. Now, I think you'll find that they'll go back and the first question they'll say is is there any chance of a loan? That would be the first question that Arsenal will ask. And then on the back of that, we'll see whether there's any progression. If they can get that done, if there's a fee involved, then fine. And if not, then let's see if there are any other potentials here for getting Odegaard into the club. look, it doesn't make any sense for Odegaard to stay at Real Madrid if he's not playing and he's unhappy about the situation. I don't think there's much doubt about that. He really feels that he can make an impact in that side, especially in a summer when they haven't been able to strengthen as they would usually do. So there's him and Danny Ceballos. I don't think Ceballos will be coming back to the Premier League, but he could go too. So Arsenal keeping an eye on the situation for sure. Mikel Arteta wants Odegaard back. Like, he loves him. He was the guy that talked him around in the first place, sold him the project, and had a long-term vision for him, really, as part of his team. So let's see what they can do. It would work out really nicely for Arsenal, to be honest, if they could strike a loan deal, because that basically leaves them money open to go and attack the market again and get a forward in as well. And I think last time I was on here, we were talking about the fact that the budget's probably not going to stretch to a striker and a creative midfielder at this point. Maybe this changes things.
Yeah, absolutely. It may very well do. I mean, there was always talk of, I remember you saying, I'll be very specific here, about 150 million pound could be spent this summer. It could extend up towards 200 million, but that was always reliant on players being sold. And that appears to be the biggest problem for Arsenal right now. And that's selling players. That they are struggling so much to get rid of players on big wages to other clubs. Europe is, with all due respect, they're skint. They can't seem to afford it. They're obviously delaying things as long as they can to get prices down and deals in their favor. And Arsenal seem to be really struggling in relation to that. The striker element, as you say, interest in Lautaro Martinez, no official bids, although there have been reports of like offers via third parties, and I'm still confused about what that actually means. I was talking to an intermediary yesterday, actually, and he was laughing, said he's never been so busy in his life. A really good guy, a guy I knew for years. He's a lawyer. He does sort of work as an intermediary as well for football clubs. He says he's actually really weird. It's like they use us to put bids in for them just so they can deny it to the press. And he goes, I'm not complaining. He goes, I've got quite because I'm very expensive on a day rate. So,
well, exactly.
He literally says it's as simple as they tell me what to say. I go and say it, and I give him a response, and it's a day rate. And he goes, it's about half hour's work.
Yeah, well, as long as you've got that qualification to your name to go and ask that question, you're away. Like, it's a nice place to be.
Exactly. And my friend, the friend of mine, he hasn't actually worked in that area of like law and the for ages, but he still holds a qualification. He just said that there's so many clubs using intermediaries that there are not enough intermediaries. I was like, wow. And he said, I said, why do you think it is? He went, it's purely so that they can do what Arsenal did yesterday, and that's say we haven't been serious about James Maddison or whatever. It's mad though because fans see through it. But what's happening with the striker front for Arsenal? Because Tammy Abraham seems like he's holding on for them a little bit because of the agree that was fee with Roma. There's talk of the Vokarigi, but do you really think that's the quality of player that Arsenal wanted? Are there any other options out there for him right now?
Doesn't really seem to be many options. I mean, Tammy definitely wanted the Arsenal move. West Ham pretty much gave up on Tammy Abraham because of that. And then other clubs came into the fold as well. So they moved away from the situation. And yeah, I think Tammy thought it would make a lot of sense. But Arsenal haven't gone down there. I think a lot of it's to do with not getting rid of Lacazette. Maybe Lacazette has a great game tonight and proves that they don't need a striker. I watched the pre-season game, Tottenham and Arsenal, last weekend, and Lacazette was basically shooting on sight. He's got the real bit between his teeth, trying to prove that he's still got something to do here. He's on a big money contract. He likes being at Arsenal, likes being in London. He doesn't really want to leave. So it would take a huge offer at this point for Lacazette to go somewhere, and they've struggled so far to find a buyer. So unless there's a club out there that I guess suffers an injury to a key striker or forward and needs somebody late on, and then the door might open for Lacazette to go. But otherwise, it doesn't seem to be there. And at this stage, you just assume that Arsenal are going into the season with this attack. That can change, of course it can. Like I say, with the Odegaard situation, if that was to be a loan, then you've got that remaining transfer budget to then put into a forward. Maybe they do go and make that bid for Lautaro Martinez that they've been threatening. Maybe they do look at one of the other guys that they've approached over the summer. So we'll see. But Arsenal definitely having to carefully weigh up that situation. And it's a tough one because the creative midfielder and the forward are the two signings that are going to define the season. It's all very well signing Ben White, who's going to have, be a good player, I'm sure, for signing the other players that they got in early, trying to get Ramsdale. But ultimately, they're not going to change games. And that's what Arsenal are looking for right now because they don't have it. They need to find your Bruno Fernandes, I guess, the guy that comes in and changes everything in terms of the thinking, I think, and the belief of the team and the players around them. And you can just imagine, walking out for the game after Brentford and you've got a guy alongside you that is capable of pulling something out of nothing. And that's just what gives you that extra 5% belief that you're going to get something out of the game. So that's what they'll be looking for.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's just such a... I'm not even going to say that Arsenal's window has fizzled out. I think that's almost a little bit disrespectful to the quality players that have come in. But I think they've hit that moment where they haven't been able to get rid of the players, as we've already mentioned, and that's really kind of slowed down their final pursuit of individuals. Because at the end of the day, every club, to a degree, has to sell to buy. You have to clear out players. You've got to balance the books. You also don't want to have... It was interesting. You saw the way Chelsea fans, the players celebrated with Kepa after he made them 2 penalty saves. The players care about their teammates. And we saw it in Man United a couple of seasons ago. There was a lot of friction between the players towards the board when they didn't allow Sergio Romero to move because they felt, well, why are you going to make a man just sit in the stands and waste a season of his, a year of his career? A lot of the Arsenal players are not going to want to see the likes of Lacazette. Yes, they're getting paid, but just sitting there rotting away in the stands. They seem to find it disrespectful. So there's an element of balance in that dressing room as well that's going to be key here. The other Arsenal player that they've said they've now pulled away from him, but a big chunk of the money towards the £150 million spend. And now this is what's going to be really interesting because this could infuriate Arsenal fans. Anything between 20 and 30 million pounds was reported as being committed for Ramsdale. They now say they're pulling away. They could be looking to put that money into another goalkeeper. But that's obviously 25 to 30 million pounds have now got back, if that makes sense, because they're not spending it on him. Do you expect that to be put into another goalkeeper? Do you feel that they may go back in for Ramsdale?
I'm just hoping I might have a text actually while we were on here to say whether it was moved on or not, but it hasn't actually landed. The reply hasn't come yet. The thing with Ramsdale was initially the reason they went down that route is because there was doubt over Bernd Leno and whether he was staying, because there was a feeling that he was quite keen to go and play in Germany. And that hasn't really surfaced again. So I'm not sure that this is as important as it was going to be in the eyes of the people doing the deals. So that's interesting. I still think they would probably wait for the player. I think that they really like him and he's so highly thought of that I don't think they're then going to go and just throw £30 million at a different goalkeeper. That's not really where they're at, as far as I understand it. They might sign another goalkeeper, but they're not at that sort of level we've been talking. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. Hopefully during the course of the next half hour I get a text back on it and we find out exactly where they're at, because there was optimism that they would find some middle ground over that deal. And I say, like earlier on I talked about the Varane deal and I kind of move on from it because I'm like, okay, that one's getting done. I was almost at that point with Ramsdale because it seemed so straightforward that they would just find an agreement somewhere in the middle. The player wanted the move. The only thing they didn't have was a willing selling club because they were trying to squeeze every penny they could out of it. And they're still trying to do that. So let's wait and see, I guess, Matt.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing. As we know, fans will always look at it from a fan point of view, and that's kind of what my job is, to sort of be that voice of the fans and ask questions. Remember, viewers, if you want to get your questions in for Dean, we always prioritize the member chats and the super chats that come in. If you've got anything you want to ask, whether it's an opinion, what he thinks, what he feels, get them into us now. But I certainly think one for me, and I'm not even an Arsenal fan, is they don't spend that money. And this is what it all comes down to. Depends what you want. And this is why the intermediary things I feel is really, really important, is you get this situation where, okay, I've read a report that they've bid 50 million for Maddison. I've read that somewhere. I've seen cash plus players. Let's just say the 50 million is true. Let's just take that was enough, the maximum to go up to. If you're not signing Ramsdale for 25 million, you've got the 70 million for James Maddison. So fans will just say, well, take that money, put it on Maddison and do it. But I suppose then you get the real element, which is where if the club don't think Maddison is worth 70 odd million, they're not going to they're not going to overcommit onto one player, I suppose. But
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out and the reaction from fans. No doubt about it whatsoever. Make sure you've smashed the like button, please, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get the stream up to that 500 like mark as well. Chelsea talk coming up soon regarding Jules Kounde and the next thing they're going to be doing at Stamford Bridge. But before that, there's been some breaking news this morning, and that's that Virgil van Dijk has penned a new contract at Liverpool. That seems to be the majority of the business that's going on at the moment at Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk, new deal. And surprising to see that at all, and the work that Liverpool are doing?
Not surprising to see the Van Dijk deal, no. I mean, they've basically held that news back. So it's a good news story on the eve of the season. I mean, Van Dijk was always going to sign that deal. It had been negotiated a while back, to be honest, and they were just waiting to tie it all up. And it's a nice time to say that one of your star players is staying. I mean, look, Alisson's already signed, Fabinho signed, Trent signed an extension. And now really, I guess you wonder, like, what's next? Because the guys that everybody wants to see sign new deal, really, I guess, is Salah, Mane, Jordan Henderson. I think Robertson needs a new deal as well at some point. So that will be the next conversation. And at a time when there's not impetus on spending money in the transfer market, you at least want to see them doing it, retaining the core of a squad that has brought them success in the last few years. And obviously Van Dijk, committing his future and agreeing a 4-year contract is key, because, having him back this season is basically a new signing. And Liverpool are quietly optimistic. They think that, okay, they haven't been active in the market. They haven't replaced Gini Wijnaldum. They haven't signed another forward that, from the outside you would feel they need. But they've had a good pre-season campaign. They went away for a whole month together. And during that time, from what I'm told, like they've got a real belief that, we've got each other. We've done it before. Let's go and do it again. Let's prove to everybody. Everybody always writes us off. Everyone always doubts us. Let's go and do it again. We don't need to sign somebody. Like, we've proved we can win the league, and we've still got those players. We're still young enough to do it again with those players. And Jurgen Klopp's basically come out with a similar statement. I don't believe that Jurgen Klopp wouldn't have liked at least one signing. I still wouldn't completely rule out them making one more signing. But at the moment, we're being told basically not to expect that. It's not looking likely that Liverpool do sign anyone. So we'll have to see. In the meantime, retaining at least players like Van Dijk helps assure fans that it's not the end of the world. But, the big one for me is Mo Salah and how that progresses this season, and whether you can tie him up, or whether are we on the countdown here to this squad starting to fall apart in terms of that front line and Salah and Mane, because those two, again, in pre-season apparently have set the standard for what the rest of the squad are expected to deliver this season. They churn out so many games that you'd expect them to at some point be held back or pick up some knocks, but they keep getting out there and doing it. How long can you continue that for? I don't know, but maybe one more season they'll get out of all of them and they can do it.
I think Liverpool's situation's interesting. There's a lot of optimism because there was a lot of excuses last year. And I don't say that with any kind of salt as a Manchester United fan. It was, we didn't get Thiago in early enough and he got injured. Henderson was out injured. Van Dijk's injuries got to us. I feel that I saw some stoutness and complacency creeping in from around the March, just before lockdown prior. But of course, the injuries I'm not saying they masked it in a horrible way, because they were terrible injuries, but they gave them that, if the injuries hadn't have happened, we'd have been okay, which I think is a fine reason to give. But you do now need to bounce back this season. And I think that I pray and hope that Van Dijk doesn't have any kind of recurrence, but these things can happen, because what he hasn't done yet is had a proper game where you're stretching yourself and pushing yourself to the highest levels. I worry about Konate. I worry about Thiago. I worry about Henderson's ability to stay fit. They've just had these issues in the past, etc. The problem is for Liverpool is I feel that if everybody stays fit, they can win they could maybe win the league. I think top 4, if they get a couple of injuries, is over. Like, I really do. And that isn't because they're not a good enough team, but there's burnout, there's fatigue, and there's the improvements around them. And when you look at the teams that are vying for that title, mainly Chelsea and City, the strength and depth they had is absolutely scary, and they've improved once again. And I just worry about the Liverpool players breaking. I was talking breaking down and getting injuries, and but then that's Jurgen Klopp's model, isn't it? In the sense of he works on that hard, and he likes a small squad. So if he, it's going to be intriguing. I mean, the link to the likes of the Coup, Sound again still. It'd be interesting to see what happens with those deals towards the end of the window, whether they bring any of them in. But literally, this Liverpool fans that come on the terrace are split. We have some that are so, I trust Klopp, I trust FFG, they've done it before, we'll be fine. And there are others that you can clearly see are just panicking because they feel that, more was needed to be done. But certainly going to be an interesting time. Viewers, I would love to get your opinions on this. Remember to send your questions in here to us. There's a super chat here from Gavin that says, can't believe Lukaku is a Chelsea player once again. And I have to be honest with you, Dean, a couple of weeks ago, you pretty much called it almost to the day where you said in 2 weeks' time, we'll have a resolution on all of this. Now, I'm not sure if you knew that the exact day that Chelsea would be announcing it. Maybe you did, you know what I mean? You and Lukaku being best friends and all. That's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not making that claim. No one will come. But a good bit of business that by Chelsea to bring in Lukaku for that price.
Yeah, it's a brilliant signing. It's funny to go back a few weeks when Chelsea fans were in panic mode all over social media. Urging the board to get their act together and can't believe all these other clubs are doing this business and we're not doing anything. Why haven't we signed Haaland? And as we said on here, just wait. And Lukaku's now done. I didn't know the day it was going to be done, but I did know it would be done. I got a very good indication it would be done because I was told that Lukaku wanted it. And it's happened. And it's such a good signing. And I think that people that are pessimistic about this haven't been watching Lukaku for the last 2 years, because you're not getting the player here that was at Man United. You're getting a completely different monster, if you like. Like, Lukaku is full of confidence. He believes he's one of the top 5 strikers in world football. He has been proving it by scoring goals left, right and centre. He's scoring different type of goals. If he misses an opportunity, his head doesn't go down anymore. He just makes sure the next one goes in. Sure, at the Euros time, one in particular, I think he got a goal ruled out on VAR. And he kind of looks across like, oh, that's annoying, but don't worry, I'll score in a minute. And he did. He's just got that belief about him. And having that as the focal point of Chelsea's attack is pretty scary for everybody else. The options they've already got is ridiculous. It's one of the reasons that I would be worrying if I was Liverpool. Don't think they've got that depth of options in any position, to be honest, let alone the attack. And while Liverpool do have, if all the guys are fit, then the front three is fine. But you start to rotate, you start to get deeper into the season. Chelsea are prepared for it well, and that's where the difference could come in. I mean, look, we talked about Liverpool a second ago, and that they might struggle to be in that conversation for winning the title, or maybe even top 4 if they lose injuries. But they did really, really well to make the Champions League at all in the end. And they didn't really have any right to be in that conversation, given the run of bad form that they had at one point. And they turned things around brilliantly. So that's why you can't rule that team out. But that's also why teams like Chelsea go and strengthen year on year, because they know that they stand still, they fall away. Liverpool have belief in the project and the team and the togetherness. Chelsea have a different approach, and Chelsea just want to keep getting stronger, get the best players in the world that are on form right now. Werner was a good signing. I think Werner will have a bounce back year as well, and he'll prove people wrong. Havertz is going to be one of the best players in the world. Great signing. Now they've got Lukaku. Now they go and try and get Kounde. Then they'll try and get Declan Rice. They're always evolving, Chelsea. They won't stand still.
Yeah, it's something I respect about Chelsea Football Club. And when I was a bit younger, I was naive, and I used to go, the way they sack managers is wrong. This only up until a couple of years ago. And, when I expanded the football terrace and started talking to fans of clubs, listening to what their club is doing, I've realized it's exceedingly high standards. And we're not talking about, they don't sack the janitor or a burger maker or a program seller for having a bad few days at work. That level, they treat people nicely. It's at the elite end of the spectrum where we're talking about millionaires. Now, if I'm being paid £5 million a year to manage Chelsea and then do a bad job, and they pay me £10 million to sack me, I've stopped feeling sorry for them, because there's nothing to feel sorry about. Like it's, you get me? You're not being put back in the dole line, unable to feed your kids. You've just found an elite end job and you get paid out for it. And I think I used to look at that as disrespectful. It's wrong, but you realize it's just, no, we maintain this high standard. And I look at the Chelsea squad. It doesn't matter if you're purchased for 100 million or if you're an academy player. If you're good enough, you stay. If you are not, they get rid of you. It's just, they're the cold hard facts. I don't think you can dress it up in any other which way. When I see academy players loaned out 2 or 3 seasons on the bounce, I'm very blunt. It's because Chelsea don't think you're good enough. If you were, they wouldn't be loaning you out. And that's like most clubs. If your players you're loaning out were good enough right now, they wouldn't be going out on loan. Like,
they make mistakes. Look, they make mistakes, and I think one of the good things about them is that they're willing to go back on those mistakes. Like Lukaku, you look at what player he was when he signed for Chelsea originally, like 10 years ago. He was really hyped up. I remember being at the press conference when he first walked in, and he was a young footballer, and he already had the stature of a man, and he was a bit shy, and he was a bit cautious about what he'd stepped into, and he never got the opportunity to prove himself. And since then, he's been through so many different challenges in his career, and now he's absolutely determined to prove that he deserves his shot to come back and to show people what he's capable of. Declan Rice, Chelsea made a mistake by letting him go as a kid, but at the time it wasn't a mistake, because Declan Rice wasn't meeting the standards that were required, and there were better players within the academy setup. He's gone away. Now they're interested in him again, because he's raised his game and he's got back to the standard that is required of you to be a Champions League winning footballer. That's why Chelsea are Champions League winners, because they keep moving on. Frank Lampard, for all the emotion that was involved, for all the excuses that you could have thrown his way about why Chelsea weren't doing well at the time when he left, they were like, sorry, we're not listening to that. We've got a bloke that will be able to do this. And he went and won the Champions League a few months later. That's how they are. That's how you become the best. And Lukaku wants to be part of that. And that's what I love about him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And just some breaking news as well. I think he's watching the show, to be honest. But Fabrizio Romano has just given an update about Arsenal now preparing to make a bid for Odegaard. Always been the number one priority, and they're pushing forward with that as it's a more realistic deal. It does go on to say that Maddison never been close, and Aouar is also on the list. I mean, they've never been close. I always find the never been close thing a real interesting take, because I sort of feel it depends on the reports. If you're £10 million shy of the bid being accepted, I think and a player wants to join, I think that's pretty close. But again, it depends, I suppose. It's how you want to look at it. But listen, it is what it is. We've gone to member chat only for the remainder of the show, so we can get your questions in, because there was too many coming through. I couldn't see them all. But the next deal that I want to speak about, actually, there's a super chat here from Micah that says Lukaku over Grealish on level of impact for their club. I mean, I do agree. I mean, it's an interesting one. How much will Lukaku elevate Chelsea forward over Jack Grealish elevating Man City? I think in the short term, Lukaku will be more noticeable.
100%. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Grealish, is he really £100 million footballer? In my eyes, no. Like, he's not. He could be. He could become that. But Aston Villa did an amazing job to work his contract so that's what his valuation was. And I'm sure, obviously, like if City sees something in him and Pep feels he can evolve him, then he will become that player.
Yeah.
But over the next 12, 18 months, I would 100% expect a better all-round goal output from Lukaku. I'm bringing in Grealish's assists and stuff into that as well. I know he's not going to score as many goals as Lukaku, but he changes everything. He changes the dynamic, and I think he also changes what you get from the players around him. One of the reasons I say that I think Werner will kick on this season is because some of the pressure's now lifted on him. He's not the guy that everybody's looking at, not scrutinising every single error he makes. You know, look, he only got 6 Premier League goals. It wasn't good enough. His XG for last season, he should have got 13 according to that. And he was in Bundesliga. I think in his last season of Leipzig, he got 28, I think. So it was a big fall off for him, but he'll jump back from that, and I'd expect him to at least double his tally and get 12, probably upwards of that for Chelsea. And I think that he'll benefit from playing with Lukaku. Lautaro benefited from playing from Lukaku. Like, part of the reason Lautaro is disappointed right now is because he's lost his mate, who was basically fired into a Serie A title that not many people expected him to win. And Lautaro got a lot of goals as well last season. I think we'll see that bounce off of Werner as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's pressure as well, isn't it? Suddenly there isn't the pressure on Werner to be the main guy. He doesn't need to be the chief goal scorer or anything along those lines. I think it helps. I think it helps him massively. There's no doubt about it. We are going to talk about Jules Kounde. Kind of links into the super chat from Ben Marshall that says plans for Chalobah. He's been amazing for Chelsea at pre-season and in the Super Cup. So in relation to the centre-back area at Chelsea, Chalobah, will he stay? And with Jules Kounde, do you expect to see this deal progress after the opening weekend of the season?
Yeah, it's difficult to see Chalobah getting much of a chance because it seems risky, and Chelsea aren't the type of team that are going to take risks on the back of becoming the best team in Europe. It was interesting to see him line up, and it's great that they're willing to throw a player into the fold at a moment like this when they are looking at signing some of the most high-profile players in the world. I'll be surprised if he featured much in the Premier League next season. Jules Kounde, obviously they'll revisit that. Now that Lukaku's all tied up, it becomes easier. It's hard to focus on 2 deals at the same time. Chelsea obviously decided to prioritise a centre-back ahead of a defensive midfielder. They were looking at Declan Rice and still are looking at Declan Rice, but decided a centre-back is more important. Raphael Varane, they were initially looking at him, but it became clear he wanted to go to United. Had a little look at Koulibaly and Pau Torres. But Konde, seems gettable. So they feel that the age he's at, the way that he can still be, I guess, sculpted as a player to fit into the system that Chelsea are building is a good fit. But the problem Chelsea have got is that Sevilla are pretty stubborn. And when it comes to the valuation of the player, I think his release clause is 68 mil. They want as close to that as they can get. And Man City found out last summer that it's difficult to bargain with him. I think City's bid was something like £47 million, which they thought would get the player, didn't get him. And Sevilla have got no problem with batting away bids. And look, they've got ambitions of their own this season as well. I know from an English point of view, we just assume that everybody wants to come here, that clubs have to sell their players to clubs like Chelsea. And like, obviously it is a huge move for him. But from Sevilla as a club's point of view, it's difficult to lose Jules Kounde right now if it's not the money that they're looking for, because there's an opportunity for them to close the gap again at the top of La Liga. They had an opportunity to win that league last season. They fell away in the late stages of the season, part of that because of experience, part of that because of tiredness, but they had a really good go at it. They finished 4th the last 2 seasons. They want to improve on that, and if Kounde can still be part of their team, then they would choose for that to be the case rather than sell him. So let's see if Chelsea can convince them to sell. That they don't want their cast-offs. They want money if it's going to happen. It's going to take over £50 million, and we'll see how close they can get to that 68 mil.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The Zuma situation, of course, really slowed that down from happening. I mean, he's now sort of, again, reports began to West Ham. Maybe they're going to. I mean, West Ham have done no business. I'm very, very surprised by that. There's also talk of a takeover, isn't there? So if a takeover is happening, very rarely do the current owners spend any of that money, because it could be folly in the end. There's a super chat here that says the Premier League is back tonight, Terry. Brentford to beat Arsenal 2-0. from a Spurs fan. So yeah, pretty predictable position there. A lot of our members as well, Dean, are using our brand new goat emoji with your name on it. They've also got a little nickname for you as well now. They're called either Tier 1 Dean, which I know you'll laugh at because that conversation, or the Dean Machine. That's what they're kind of calling you. There's lots of different names coming out there.
Yeah. Well, on our podcast, we've got a podcast, Ranks FC, if anyone wants to come and listen. I've become the transfer guru over there, so that's what the listeners call me over there, the guru. So we'll throw that one into the mix as well.
You know, it's interesting as well, Dean. Like, I know we spoke about this privately, but I've had a lot of people message me saying, I weren't keen when you first bought Dean. And I said, why? And they said, like, sometimes just talks. And I'm like, yeah, it gives you information and gives you his opinion. That's what these shows are about. And he said, yeah, I know we spoke about it privately. He goes, yeah, but I just sort of like, I'm used to getting like transfer news in really short little like,
yeah.
Boom, boom. And I said, well, you've got to listen to what Dean says maybe once or twice, and then you start to notice that a lot of these things happen. Like 3 weeks ago, some of the big Arsenal accounts were having a right pop, and I know you saw it about about the Maddison stuff because it was talks about as being close and everything else. And then suddenly you said, I don't think it can be affordable. Now, 3 weeks later, that's what's being pushed by those same big Arsenal accounts. It's like, it's interesting. It's like the way this sort of stuff comes to fruition.
Yeah,
over the course.
It's one of the reasons I just try and stay away from Twitter as much as I can during the day because it clouds your judgment. It really does. And you know, some journalists I know get caught up in it too much. And for me, that happened a lot, and it starts to mess with your mind. And so sometimes you're better off just stepping away from it, speaking to people that are actually involved in these things and telling you stuff, and just trust what people are telling you. Look, sometimes you get it wrong. There's no doubt, but say like the Maddison thing, I was told like from the Leicester end, like we're trying to price him out of it. Like we don't want him to go there, and if they pay 70 million, then fine, but they won't. It's Arsenal, so there you go. That's where we're at with it, and you can't take these things too seriously. Someone asking who I support Fulham, so it's easy to say objective when you support Fulham.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this man's stadium has a neutral stand where you can so that tells you everything about the banter. Man like Slen's talk here, big Chelsea fan, says not to sound too spoiled, but are there any details on midfielders for Chelsea? Also, any updates on departures?
That is spoiled, isn't it? I can't see it in this window now. It would take Kounde to be tied up reasonably fast, and for them to basically have a cheeky go at Declan Rice. That's what it would take. They would need to have the last week open, I think, for anything to become viable. They still like Declan Rice, and if it's not now, then it's 2022, and they'll push forward with it. He knows that they like him, and he's willing to hang on. So that'll happen. I've talked about Jude Bellingham in the past, though, and I still think that one becomes interesting. We'll see what happens at Dortmund this season under Marco Rosa. I know he's excited about the project there, and he's definitely getting better as a player. But Chelsea do also have an eye on Jude Bellingham if for whatever reason Declan Rice didn't work out. So yeah, Chelsea fan, you know, get a few Jude Bellingham games under your belt this season. Watch a few Dortmund matches just in case that January comes around and you start being linked with him again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a comment here from one of our members, The Undertaker CFC, says, you said Kounde was a cert. Now you're saying they don't want to sell anyone that can say that. Let's be honest with you here. I said, due to conversation with other people, that Kounde was a cert. Dean has never said that. So what I will just iterate here again is that Pete and Dean, by the way, Pete didn't say it was a dead cert either, but Pete might say something on a Thursday. It's different from Dean on a Tuesday. It's different reporters with different stories with different sources. It's listening to my view is I always say this to the viewers: listen to different people, absorb what other people say, and then make your own informed decision based on what you think sounds more likely. But yeah, Dean has never, I'm not sorry, but where's your mouse? Has never said on this show that it's a dead cert. That came from, again, I actually spoke to some the agent friend of mine who's based in France. He still keeps saying he's absolutely going to go ahead. He had to go at me for apologizing for jumping the goddamn gun. And I'm like, listen, I said, I apologize because I'm not an in the know or a journalist. And I just shared the information. He was spot on about the stuff with Varane and stuff. I'll just go over it again. I haven't done that for a few weeks now. I didn't really enjoy it. At all. We've got a comment here from, I've got to try and find it here and now because it was an interesting one. It was about Man United. This from Shirik says, have you heard any outgoings at Manchester United? Will they determine a midfield signing? So any more business at United, essentially, really.
Yeah, I mean, Pogba was the really one that would have influenced that position. And I said a couple of weeks ago that, there was obviously links to, I think it was PSG at the time. So it wasn't going to go. It wasn't going to take a move to PSG at this point. Paul Pogba was always going to wait it out. It's in his best interest not to sign a contract at Man United. In his best interest not to agree to a transfer right now because next year everything opens up for Pogba, and Real Madrid have got a lick in their lips at the moment because their three guys that they want are all looking like they might become available, and Pogba's one of them. Mbappe and Haaland being the other two, and you think, okay, so in a year's time, there's Haaland with a 75 million euro release clause. Pogba can go for free, and Mbappe can go for free. That's not a bad little group of players to sign and bounce back from. PSG doing great business this window, and if Madrid respond in that manner, then we suddenly got the Champions League opening up nicely again. But yeah, so because Pogba hasn't gone and isn't going to go, then I don't think United make a significant signing in midfield. I might, maybe I'll eat my words on that, but they've got provisions to do so. I've talked many times on here about how they've inquired about Camavinga. They've built relations with Neves, and those things are true. They've looked at Declan Rice, decided it was too expensive. I think we'll have to see how this season starts to pan out, to be honest. Might even be that Pogba becomes convinced that Man United is a good place to be. Who knows? If United are really putting together a title charge, maybe he does sign a new contract. But I don't see a midfielder at this stage signing.
Yeah, I feel. I mean, that's kind of been the thought all summer that would.
It was always unlikely. It was a chance, but it was never likely.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Premier League clubs have got money, but there is still. I think that again, the hindrance for Man United has been other clubs buying players. I thought West Ham would come in with a proper bid for Jesse Lingard. No one's really come in for Matic, and a lot of our players, I think we would have tried to have sold abroad, but they don't really have any money. So you end up in this situation where we've done well to bring in what we've done, but there's been no other out. If Martial would have, if Rashford hadn't had the injury and would have been sold, if Lingard would have been bought, maybe there'd have been a bit more investment. But the books,
100%, yeah. Those are two situations. I mean, West Ham, the reason they haven't made a bid for Lingard is because they're waiting to see if he's actually in the team at Man United by the end of the month. If Lingard isn't playing for Man United, isn't getting a kick, then I think there's a chance West Ham do have another go at getting Lingard. But as it stands right now, there's just no point because Lingard wants to prove himself at Man United and have a go at it. And West Ham aren't doing any business to convince him that he'd be better off jumping over to them. And yeah, with Martial, he's got like an extra chance, to be honest. I didn't think he'd have a sniff really of starting the season, but he has now because of injuries and absence. Let's see if he can capitalise on it. I'm still not getting great vibes from people around the club that he's got a long-term future there. Still think that if an offer would have come in for Martial this summer, they would have taken it. But he has got an opportunity, so let's see what he can do while Rashford's out and while Cavani's not there.
Absolutely. David here with a comment says, are there any other players on City's radar?
I mean, it's a tricky one. I think that if they don't get Kane, then it looks like they're going to attack at least the first half of the season without a traditional number 9. Gabby Jesus obviously is still going to be at the club if they don't sign somebody else. They could play him. They'll rotate the other options they've used there before as a false 9. Perhaps Sterling becomes more influential through the middle if Jack Grealish is going to be an option on the left. There are people that they've looked at, not deep, like they've considered João Felix because his 2 years at Atletico Madrid haven't gone brilliantly. They have asked the question both years about his availability. They haven't had encouraging responses, so they haven't pursued that deal. But João Felix is a player they like. Lautaro Martinez is somebody they have liked but have never pushed on with, especially not this summer. They even had more of a look last summer than they have this year. So there's nothing really there with him. Obviously, Haaland, that's not going to happen. Lukaku, they were interested in. Chelsea just decided to push ahead with that, and City decided to put everything into Kane. So be an interesting one. But if anyone can find a fix, then it's Pep Guardiola, isn't it? Without a number 9.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a comment here again from Govin that says Kounde is a great player, but he's still too young and inexperienced for Chelsea. I'm a Liverpool fan. Believe we don't need any new signings at the moment. So he is fully back in FSG and everything going on down there. Viewers, do me a big favor. Pinned to the live comment section is our notification group. Please go and get yourself signed up to that right away. Never miss another Football Terrace video again. There's no spam in there, no advertising. It's admins only, but we just share the links when we're going live, when we've got new content that is on the way. Remember, we will be live tonight at full time after Brentford versus Arsenal. We've got a lot of the original cast of the Football Terrace on there, but brand new fans that are going to be phoning in as well. So make sure you get yourselves in and ready and tuned into that this evening. Dean, absolute pleasure to speak as always, mate. And right now, just before we go into it, who's your pick to win the Premier League? Who's your pick?
I don't think there's ever been a harder season to predict it. We actually on our podcast we usually do this. We were like, it's absolutely pointless, isn't it? We've got no idea what's going to happen here. But I do think Chelsea have got a really good chance. If I had to go with someone, I think I would go Chelsea, just because the quality all over the pitch, but also because of the way that Tuchel was able to transform that squad in 4 months. What can he do over the course of another season, having given him a pre-season as well and added Lukaku to it? It's pretty special what Chelsea are doing right now. And I think that if Man City don't get Harry Kane, then Chelsea are going to be my favourites.
There we go. There we go. Do me a big favor, ladies and gentlemen. Smash the like button, please. Get that done right now. I'm back later on today with more content for you. This has been the Done Deal Show. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you.